Welcome back. Good evening once again as we keep going, as we cross the midnight hour here on the East Coast. This is now day 1309 of the Trump administration. 75 days now remain until the presidential election. We have just seen night 3 of the Democratic National Convention. Kamala Harris accepted her party's historic nomination to be the vice presidential candidate running on a ticket with Joe Biden. She's the first black woman, first Asian American to appear on a major party national ticket. The night also included other presidential firsts. Hillary Clinton, the first woman nominated for president by a major party. Barack Obama, the nation's first African-American leader. The president reacted to the latter speech with falsehoods in all caps, but in real time. Quote, he spied on my campaign and got caught. Then there was this. Why did he refuse to endorse Slow Joe until it was all over and even then was very late? Why did he try to get him not to run? Trump's handling of the pandemic, which has now stolen over 173,000 souls from our midst, the cratering U.S. economy, racial justice, gun violence, climate change were all on the docket in tonight's broadcast. But the overarching message of the evening was the threat Donald Trump poses to American democracy.
When we vote, things change. When we vote, things get better.
We fight for a more perfect union because we are fighting for the soul of this country and for our lives.
We are at a crossroads. We can let the shooting continue, or we can act.
We have the chance this November to end 2 existential crises: the Trump presidency and the environmental annihilation he represents.
Donald Trump is destroying our country and everything we care about.
Every day that passes, you deport more moms and dads and take them away from kids like me.
For 4 years, people have told me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could do it all over. Look, this can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election.
As Speaker of the House, I've seen firsthand Donald Trump's disrespect for facts, for working families, and for women in particular.
COVID-19 was Trump's biggest test. He failed miserably. Today, America has the most COVID deaths in the world and an economic collapse.
Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe. Tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of these dark times and build it back better.
The constant chaos leaves us adrift. The incompetence makes us feel afraid. The callousness makes us feel alone. It's a lot. And here's the thing. We can do better and deserve so much more. We have a chance to change the course of history. We're all in this fight. You, me, and Joe, together.
That's about how tonight went, and here to talk about it all, our own Alicia Menendez, who you can see, as I do, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, weekends on this very network. Robert Costa, national political reporter, also with the Washington Post, moderator of Washington Week on PBS, and Jason Johnson, veteran journalist, contributor over at the Grio, a professor at Morgan State University. Good evening to our friends, and welcome to you all. Alicia, let's rewind a bit. Earlier in the evening than Obama and Harris, families were celebrated, women were celebrated, the fabric of society was celebrated, but against the heavy backdrop of mass shootings, of families being separated, of climate change, a tough story to weave. In your view, did they do that part successfully?
They did it successfully, and I thought it was such an interesting contrast to last night. Watching last night, it felt very much an appeal to a persuadable voter concerned with safety, security, Tonight felt much more like a message to the base, and more specifically, as you were just outlining there, really trying to tie the movements that we are seeing across this country, the Black Lives Matter movement, the immigration rights movement, the climate change movement, the women's movement, the movement against gun violence, and saying, well, all of those movements are sort of running parallel to this election. It is time for the enthusiasm and energy that is fueling those movements to intersect with this moment. I also noticed, Brian, and I'm sure you did too, that there were specific, direct pleas tonight to young voters. You had those coming from Hillary Clinton, who asked young voters not to give up on our democracy. You had that coming from former President Obama, who said, please use this moment as a way of harnessing all of your energy and using government as a force for good. So a different message than we saw last night. I think the question is how that becomes additionally complicated as we continue through this election. There weren't as many faces from those movements being presented tonight as there might be in the future. And so a different message. We'll see if that continues to play out into tomorrow evening.
Robert Costa, let's talk about the institutionalist Republican senators, of which there are many. A couple of them are running for re-election. Most of them have spent the last couple of years hiding under the nearest rock. When our former president says our very democracy is being threatened, do you think if we could hook some of them up to a polygraph, because Lord knows they couldn't say it publicly, they might get tweeted at, do you think they would agree?
Brian, they see what happened tonight at the Democratic convention, and they see that Obama coalition reassembling. And this is such an important time in America as we remember the 19th Amendment. But talking to Republicans and Democrats in recent minutes, it's clear that they're not only talking about the 19th Amendment these days or tonight, they're talking about the 22nd Amendment that bans a president from going beyond 2 terms. Democrats are looking at that Obama speech tonight and saying maybe one day he could come back, maybe that 22nd Amendment could be repealed, because that was a rebuke, a historic rebuke of a current president by a former president. And that speaks to the fundamental core of this country, its values. And it was a partisan speech on one level, but it was beyond that from President Obama, a speech that many people, while Senator Harris's speech was historic in and of itself and had its own power, that speech by a former president in a constitutional setting, Republicans are sitting up straight tonight and paying attention.
Jason, I'll say what I said opening the broadcast tonight. Over 8 years, you come to know your president pretty well, especially those of us who pay attention for a living, but all Americans, all citizens, all consumers. How is it that the combination of traits we saw in Barack Obama tonight had not been revealed in their totality prior to now?
I think Barack Obama has always been a much more reserved person than we've seen him in his sort of much more relaxed, open shirt post-presidency life. And I also think that, he realizes how dire things are. I mean, this is a president who's now openly saying, look, when I initially had this job, I was going to be very quiet and I was going to go into this post-presidency. Now he knows that Donald Trump is trying to steal the election. Now he knows this is the code red. This is the loud claxons. If we do not get involved, it's not time to chastise. It's not time to talk about rules and institutions. If we don't get involved, we will not have a democracy to protect. So I was impressed with what he said substantively. But I'll also say this, Brian, I've seen Barack Obama speak in person. I have seen him on television. I have seen him get misty-eyed. I was at the funeral for Clementa Pinckney at Mother AME Church. The president looked like he was about to cry. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a way that Barack Obama emanated tonight. I love this country, and it could be gone. And I want you all to understand that. If you looked in his eyes, there was a passion I have never seen before in this president. There was an emotion I have never seen before in this president. And that's what I thought was probably the most impressive thing of the night. It was not his most fiery speech. It's not his rah-rah speech. It is a, I love this place, and I know you do too, and we've got to get together to save it.
Alicia, by the end of the GOP convention, coming up around this time next week, it has been said if they're successful, Americans will believe the nominee is Hunter and not Joe Biden. How are they going to counter some of the arguments made tonight on guns and shootings, on immigration, or just not at all?
They're going to paint a very different picture of America. We've already seen that with some of the people who are going to be slated to speak there. They will speak a lot. As we know, President Trump thinks that he can pick up some of these suburban women voters by emphasizing security and safety. The challenge for him is that the contours of security and safety have radically changed. And when we talk about security and safety, those voters are now thinking about a virus that has claimed over 165,000 American lives. They're thinking about an economy that is in turmoil. They're thinking about the safety and security of their family in a very different way. I want to loop back, though, Brian, to something that Jason was saying, which is this is something different, the speech you heard tonight from former President Obama than what you have heard before. And something that I think he understood was that he had to set the stakes and say, listen, I wanted him to be able to succeed. I wanted to believe that he was going to be able to do this job, and he cannot. That he couldn't just make this. It couldn't come across as a partisan attack. It couldn't come across as a vitriolic attack. It needed to seem as though I really was hoping that this was possible and this could work, and it couldn't. And what that also did, Brian, is that created the room and the space for Kamala Harris to not have to be the one tonight who had to prosecute the case against Donald Trump. She has plenty of time to do that between now and November. But tonight, such a historic moment. And it would have felt a little bit like a loss if she had had to spend a big part of her big historic moment talking about Donald Trump. The fact that she was able to instead talk about herself, talk about her story, connect her story to the story of millions of Americans was actually just much fairer to the moment than if she had been called upon to prosecute the case against Donald Trump.
Indeed, and Robert Costa, to prove perhaps that we can walk and chew gum, and to mix my metaphors, the flames are visible from Rome as we have this conversation. The post office is under attack in the United States of America, after all, and of all things. And the news media were full of new pictures today, sorting machines being tossed out, dismantled, more post office blue boxes that have been unbolted from more sidewalks, loaded on more flatbed trucks, even though the Postmaster General says, let's call a halt to this. It's been done to hinder vote-by-mail operations. The Republicans on the Hill that I love to ask you about, they have constituents who love the U.S. Post Office and are probably scared and maybe waiting for medications. So how has this gone over?
I have some inside details, Brian, talking to House Republicans tonight. This is a reckoning for them, a moment of choosing. Speaker Pelosi's bringing a new bill to the floor in the coming days to fund the post office that's under siege, the Postal Service. And Republicans in the White House, the leadership, they're whipping against Speaker Pelosi's bill. That's a sign that the Republicans are trying to hold ranks and stick with the president amid this postal crisis. But you see many Republicans up for re-election, including in the Senate, who may start to take a different tact. For now, Leader McConnell is not working with Speaker Pelosi on any kind of legislation, but this is something to watch.
Jason, a tough love question. Is the party ready for the fight that's going to come? Trump's going to go to the mattresses. In many ways, policy be damned. There's going to be something every day from here on out.
They better be. Look, Joe Biden and Senator Harris, they better be ready for all sorts of bad faith attacks and garbage and everything else that can be thrown at them. And one thing I want to add about the post office, because it's going to go into these kinds of attacks. The post office is the second largest employer in America behind Walmart. Okay, I mean, it employs right behind Walmart. It is the one government agency that touches everybody. Even the IRS can't get to you without the post office. So when Donald Trump gets up next week and tries to make his case, he's going to have to explain to everybody in America why he is attacking one of the agencies that employs hundreds and thousands of people. He's going to have to explain why he hasn't done anything about COVID. He's going to have to explain why people are afraid that their kids are going to school and coming back 2 weeks later with COVID. So I don't think that the president has to worry so much about attacking Joe Biden and attacking Senator Harris. He's got to explain what he's done. You know, today is the 4-year anniversary of when he told black Americans, hey, what do you got to lose? He said on August 9th of 2016, 4 years later, 37,000 African Americans have died in 6 months from COVID. Donald Trump's got to be on defense for part of his convention. Offense, he's got time for that.
Our thanks to our friends for hanging out late with us tonight, to Alicia Menendez, to Robert Costa, to Jason Johnson. Thanks for all that you have added to our coverage and our conversation. And